Welcome to the latest printed press. I'm Aishan Jamal, and today our subject is looking at a director's world, and I'm really happy to introduce Serkan Nihat. Welcome, Serkan, to my program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's amazing to have you here. I mean, you're a director, and the first question that I want to ask you is about your cap, because you're known as a guy with a cap. Can you tell us a story about that?
That's just when I was starting out, and people would ask to work with you. They always ask someone, do you know Serkan? And a lot of people couldn't pronounce my name, couldn't remember my name, and they go, the guy with the cap, and that became my thing. People refer to me as the guy with the cap. So I just thought that's an easier way of being remembered, I guess. So that became my thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We can see it there. It's up there, the logo, guy with a cap. The thing is, though, which is good about you, is although you are known for that, and that's like your little trademark thing, it's actually really good that you've kept your name. You haven't anglicised it. You've kept it as Serkan. Like you said, people were mispronouncing it and finding it hard to say, but yet you were determined to keep it. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I think, when I was coming through, I had a lot of friends from a Cypriot background where they were trying to get into directing or acting, and there was always this thing of, and actually not necessarily just Cypriot people as well, just changing your name. That was a very common thing, People would always ask you, what's your stage name? And I always felt that was odd, to change your name for something, and I think it's changed now. I think people are more embracing to people's cultures, and people want to retain their heritage, and keeping your name is part of that. But especially as a director, it wasn't really a common thing for directors to do, is change your name. That was never a thing. So for me, I never had that process of thinking about a different name. I thought, that's my name, I keep it. I didn't see any reason not to.
Yeah. We're going to watch your show reel now, because you've got a show reel, and find out a little bit about you. So just watch that now.
The whole world is about to explode. What do?
I just want to know where to put the camera.
Let's rage!
You can't fight in here. This is the war room.
You want answers!
I want the truth. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
You know what I want to do? Struck.
You long time.
Whatever you're reaching for better be a sandwich, but you're gonna have to eat it.
This baby hits 88 miles per hour. They're gonna see some serious shit.
Women, we can play.
Bueller.
We don't need to see his identity.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
I'll have what she's having. I move for no man.
Why do you want to fight?
Because I can't sing or dance. Hey, yo.
You got me! Who got you?
Do you realize it's snowing in my room? God damn it!
I just got the most amazing thing in my entire life!
You only exist out here because of me.
Let's rage!
I'm walking here. So say good night to the bad guy.
Got a lot of guts here.
You hold this boy's future in your hands, committee. Are you not entertained?
I work on my hair a long time, and you hit it. He hits my hair.
I think a bit after it.
Amazing. Just to explain to our audience, a show reel is almost like a visual CV, and this is what you would send to prospective clients. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. It's just a way of showcasing your work very quickly. We don't, in my industry, the CV itself, the written CV is not really a thing. Everyone's trying to look at a show reel, you know. So it's a very quick and easy way of showing a quick montage of work that you do.
That you've achieved really visually, obviously. I mean, that sort of leads us swiftly into how you got started. Can you tell us how you got started in this industry and what made you decide to become a director?
Well, I've always had a love of cinema. I mean, cinema has always been so important to me growing up, you know. Actually, Turkish cinema is my first introduction. Before Hollywood or anything like that, before American cinema, before European cinema, we used to watch Turkish films. You know, when I was a kid, it was very common on the high street to have Turkish VHS shops. That was a thing, and you know, your parents would always go to the shop on a weekend, and they'd let you pick up a few films, and that became our staple diet growing up. Films, you know, especially the Yeşilçam films.
Yes.
So for me, I grew up on this stuff. You know, I grew up with Kemal Sunal and Şener Şen before
I remember those.
Charlie Chaplin, and I was with Kadir İnanır and Cüneyt Arkın way before De Niro and Pacino, all them guys, you know. So for me, that was my introduction to cinema. And obviously, as you grow up, and I grew up during the 80s, and 80s you had the whole sort of new wave American filmmakers and the age of the blockbuster. So from a young kid's perspective, you know, the whole sort of like Star Wars and the ETs and all that stuff, it was amazing, you know. And my family used to own a restaurant in Edgware, and down the road there was a cinema. So I used to go there all the time, and you know, I'd literally just sit in a cinema all day, you know, watching back-to-back film after film after film, you know. And for me, that was heaven, you know.
Yeah, that was amazing. I did that with my dad once. He surprised me, and he made me watch one film after another. I think it was like 2 films. It's an amazing experience as a child, isn't it? I actually relate to that.
And ironically now, you know, you look at it now and you think my favourite pastime and hobby is to just sit in a cinema all day and just watch film after film, you know. So that hasn't changed. But that introduction to cinema, you know, it blew your mind, you know, as a little kid. And I always knew I wanted to get into, I didn't always know I wanted to get into film, but I had a love of film. Yeah. But film was never, I didn't realise that film was something you could do as a profession. That was always something from an entertainment point of view. Yeah. You know, so I didn't really think about it growing up, you know, and I did the whole thing of, you know, going to uni and all that stuff. And I was actually studying teaching. I was studying as a primary school teacher, and I had 1 year left of my degree, and at that time especially, male teachers were really sought after, you know. So for me, as I was finishing my degree, I was really getting calls for placements in schools, you know, because there wasn't many of us. I mean, my whole year there was 4 male teachers. Oh, okay. So from my point of view, I thought, well, this is quite easy in that sense, you know. I'm going to finish degree, get a job straight away, and it should all be, you know, plain sailing. I was studying, and I always had this ambition, you know, of the other things I wanted. I had lots of interests. I like drawing, writing, and cinema. And ironically, I was watching a DVD. That's when DVDs came out. I was watching the behind the scenes of Jurassic Park, and there was a round table with Steven Spielberg on it, and they were talking about, you know, how to make the monsters more scary, and they had all these puppets that they built, and they had all these storyboards, and he was sketching and writing, and I thought, oh my God,
this is what I want to do.
All the stuff that I love doing, and this is it. I didn't know what it was at the time. A film director, you know, again, you know, growing up, I didn't have no idea of what it was, and I thought, that's it. That's amazing. That's just brilliant. And when I looked into it and what a film director does, I thought, that's it. That's exactly what I want to do.
So how did you transpire? Because obviously you were studying to become a teacher, and then somehow you leapt into. Let's talk about that, because you've told me off camera that you went into editing first, and obviously you're sort of almost at the end of your teaching qualifications. There's lots of jobs out there. What made you think, no, actually, I'm going to pursue my passion. That's what I'm going to do?
Well, what it was, I think because I thought it was going to be so easy getting a degree and then moving forward, I thought to myself, because a lot of my friends had done it, it took a year out. Yeah. You know, I heard this all the time, you know, people taking gap years. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take a year out and see how it goes. Yeah. And if after a year I don't feel like I've moved along and nothing's happened, I can just slip back into finish my degree, and you know. So I told my family. They weren't very happy, you know, as you can understand. But then once I'd made that decision, I said I'm going to give it a go. The other problem I faced was I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about the industry. I didn't know anyone in the industry. I had no friends, family in the industry. I had no one to ring up and say, can you help me? Can you put me in the right direction? I wasn't sure what the process was at all. the only thing I did know was when we used to go out into the West End and we used to walk through Soho, I remember always seeing film posters on the outside some buildings. So I just assumed that's where they make the films. So what I started doing was knocking on doors, just giving my CV and asking if anyone needed any help, any apprenticeships, anything like that. And I did a lot of jobs here and there, 1 day, 2 day here and there, not really leading to anything, and also giving me a bit of a reality check as well. A lot of just not very pleasurable jobs, let's just say, in the sense of, you weren't really valued there, you were just seen as help and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, this is tough. But then, just luckily, I just walked into a company called Molinaire, which was a post-production company. And they were just expanding at that time, so it's just luck. I just walked in at the right time, and they needed some, essentially runners. And I did. I started off at the very bottom. I was making teas and coffees.
That's not really luck. That's you seizing the opportunity, I think. Because like you said, I mean, obviously we were talking about this as well. You've got a lot of grit, like you're quite thick-skinned, you said to me. You were able to, compare to some of your peers and your friends, able to take rejection. And it looks like at the beginning you had a lot of rejection. And a little bit, you were not completely 100% aware of where you should go and what you should do. But something within you made you think, let's persevere. And then obviously you had that opportunity, but again, it wasn't like you were directing straight away, you were running around. And I think that's very important for our younger audience to understand that things don't happen straight away. And you were saying this, things take time, but not to give up. So you were the runner, what happened next?
Well, that's it. I think, I mean, nothing brings you back to earth. You go into something, you've got all these ambitions and dreams of you want to do this and you want to do that, and suddenly you're sitting there putting Marmite on toast for the 100th time in a day. And I think that gives you a very quick reality check of just how difficult everything is. And that's the thing I found as well, because when I was doing this, obviously I was meeting new people all the time. I was meeting producers, I was meeting directors, chatting to them, asking them for advice, and they'd all say the same thing. It's just hard. It's hard work. It's a proper hustle. Nothing's easy, and I've never been deterred by that. I think I've got a strong work ethic, and so I just pursued it, and I always go the extra mile. As I was always, when my shift finished, I'd stay behind. I'd go and ask if I could sit in with other people doing, whether it's a dubbing mix, whether it was a grade, whatever it was, just to see professionals doing professional work,
Right.
And I did that all the time. Especially that first year, I'd say I was at the company probably 18, 19 hours a day, past my shift as well, just staying there, observing, helping, watching, asking if I can have a go. And I think what's nice about this industry is when people see that you've got a bit of a passion for something, you've got a bit of a work ethic, they're embracing to you, and people were embracing to me, they'd trust me with stuff. They'd say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you come and do that, And for me, it was just learning, constant learning all the time. If I wasn't learning there, I'd be at home reading. So just trying to get as much information as you can, because filmmaking is complicated. It's not an easy thing. It's very complicated. There's so many stages of it, and you need to learn all of it. And I think when people saw that I had a bit of a taste for it, people were happy to help me out. And then at that time, like I say, the company was expanding, so we're building these a new post-production suite. 12 new editing systems. So then I got moved up after a year from a runner to an edit assistant, essentially, and that's when I think my career sort of started, because then I was learning about post-production, I was learning about editing, which I'd never learned before, and I didn't realize at the time how important editing was to as a storyteller. It's one of the most important aspects of filmmaking. So I was there, and I was helping out, and I think I just got on with people, and then within a year I got promoted to an avid manager, and then for me the main thing was, after that initial year, I said to myself, I'll evaluate how it goes after a year. And yes, after that initial year I was still essentially making teas and coffees, but because of the environment I'd seen and the people doing their thing and the process and what filmmaking actually, what the nuts and bolts of it, for me, it just highlighted, or said to myself, this is where I want to be, in this environment. And I'd never had that with teaching. I enjoyed it, I thought it was a great profession, and a noble profession.
Passion.
Absolutely. And I thought, you know what, I might be at the bottom, I might be earning no money, I might not be earning money for a while, but this is where I want to be. You know, I'm excited to wake up every day and come into work and do this for a living. And from that year, I said I'm not turning back. You know, and
it was really interesting that you told me about, because we were talking about highlights of your career so far, and I expected you to say something like, I've worked with this amazing person, or I've done this amazing thing, but you actually said something which was quite meaningful. You said it was actually the first time you walked in on a big set. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was, we were doing prepping for a show called Number One Ladies Detective Agency, and I remember walking in and just seeing the setup, and I thought, wow, you know, everyone doing their thing, and you know, and obviously it's a proper film now. This isn't a low budget thing. I've worked on loads of, this was a proper thing with proper filmmakers, and everyone was at the top of their game. And I was there, and I was down the food chain, absolutely, but it was just so exciting to see all these people and be there and feel like you're worthy of being there, and you know, and you feel important, and I wasn't just being carried. I was there because I had a role as well, and I felt like I'd been accepted, you know, and it just reinforced to me that, you know, this is where I wanted to be, and this is where I should be, and it just felt good, you know. It didn't have necessarily the reward of, you know, external rewards, but for me, it was great. It was amazing.
It's not always about the money, though, is it? It's about the experience. I mean, when I've been on those big sets, I always talk about this. I spoke to you about it before. It's like the robotic arms, like they have the cameras, and is that all like the different angles, so they can take like spectacular angles? Like I've seen the cameramen with it on their arms. I just find that awesome. It is awesome when it's a bigger budget. Obviously, they go to town, don't they? And the equipment and the atmosphere is tremendous. Any other highlights so far?
I won an award for a film I made for a company called Tailor Made Media for Barclays, and it got.
We've got that, haven't we? We've got an image of that, I think, of the Barclays advert and, somewhere.
That one, it got nominated at the Cannes Media and Corporate Awards.
Oh, fantastic!
And we all went out there, and that was like my first sort of time we were
taste
in
of showbiz and glitz,
it was all,
and the red carpet,
all that stuff, and because you know people have this assumption that filmmaking is all that, and it really isn't.
No.
It's proper nuts and bolts. It's cold
quite
night,
dark as well, isn't it?
It's all that stuff. It's all freezing outside, and you know, and it's all that stuff, and
long hours,
all of that,
retaking the same 5 minutes again and again and again. I know.
It's
a
all that
little bit
stuff.
About this.
So that idea of the red carpet is like 2% of it, you know.
But it was a nice experience.
Yeah, it was an eye-opener, and then we went out there and it's all, you know, lovely, and Cannes was amazing. It's like the whole city is just built around film, and it's amazing. You walk around and sculptures on film, and shops, and everything's, you can just smell film everywhere, and it's just amazing. And that was great, you know. We went out there and we won an award, and it was just fantastic, you know. So,
it was great. Already such a tremendous achievement. And you're saying, like when we were watching the show reel, you were saying, I've done so much more since then. So we'd quite like to see all your new work as well. But you know what was interesting as well about what you spoke to me about is, I said, is this like your own business? And you said, no, freelancing is a little bit more different to owning your own business. Can you tell us a bit about that, because I think that will be really quite informative for our younger audience who want to get into filmmaking. What's the difference?
Well, I think when people say, you know, you're going to go out and you're going to make films or whatever, people have this assumption that you've got to be a production company. You know, so, and then they always ask you know, what kit do I need to buy and all that stuff. And the thing is, when I was first starting out, I just bought myself a camera, and I was earning money here and there doing wedding videos and essentially, you know, anything I could do. Once you're in the industry, you are the business. The individual is the business, you know. So you know, for me, I don't own any equipment. I don't own any cameras. I get hired on a project. So say, for example, a company they're launching a brand, they're launching a new product. They want a film made for that, you know, whether it's commercial, whatever. They'll think what is it that they want to do, and then they'll have a think about which directors are out there that kind of does that kind of stuff. And then what you do is they approach you and they say, we'd like you to write a treatment. So they give you a little brief of what the project is, and then you go away, you write a treatment, which is basically means how you would approach that project, what you would bring to it, how you'd make it look, what camera you'd use, what the overall thing would look like, you know, the pacing, all that stuff. You put it into a treatment, that then goes back to the client, and the client will have 4 or 5 of these treatments from 4 or 5 directors, and essentially you'll get picked on the job then, you know. So that's how you do it. And then once you've got the job, you're given the budget, and your job is to then make your treatment within that budget, you know.
A reality.
But that all means you're going out, you're hiring everything, because you know, you've got to think to yourself, you know, especially on a professional scale, your camera setup will cost you about, a camera itself, with everything on it, 200 grand, 250 grand.
Yeah.
You know, post-production, you know, it's thousands, so it's not really realistic for someone to own all that stuff. So your job is just that you come on board, you shoot the thing, and then you follow it through the whole post-production process. But all that stuff, all the equipment you're using, everything is hired. It's all hired. You don't own it.
Yeah. But you've got to think carefully about how you're going to bring this project to life. So I suppose you've got to have some sort of idea of the finances and how much things cost.
Yeah.
But again, is that through experience
through
actually doing the different projects that you find that out?
Yeah, I think you get you know, as soon as someone says to you, this is our budget, that straight away tells you, okay, in your mind you already know the scale of it, because you already quickly can see what that sort of budget is. And then you can very quickly decipher, you know, is it going to be like, say, like a motion control camera, or is it going to be, you know, a smaller camera, is it going to be a stage, or is it going to be on location? All that stuff is very quickly determined by the budget, you know. But yeah, essentially, once you put yourself out there, it's you as an individual, not a company, not kit, not a location, not a studio, any of that stuff. It's
so
just
all
you.
that research that you did at the beginning of your career is now paying off, basically, because you know about all the different things that you need to hire, all the different steps. So really, for people out there that want to be in the film industry, it's very wise to get that background knowledge. And necessarily, if you're doing something like being a runner or doing a bit of editing, it's not a waste of time, because actually you need that knowledge to be able to then become a successful director. I mean, we were talking again before, and you said that you've done a lot of commercials and you want to go much more into filmmaking. What are your your long-term plans now? Where do you see yourself moving towards?
Well, I always try to give myself a 1-year goal and a 5-year goal. I always try and work towards that, and then I also try and be realistic with what I'm trying to achieve. I think that's another thing I find with people is, you know, there's this thing of, I see it all the time, you know, young people, what do you want to do? I want to be rich and famous. It's like, well, okay, rich and fame comes with something. You have to have a product that gives you rich and fame. You can't, rich and famous is not enough. And then when they break it down, you realize they don't really know how or what they're going to get. They just see the end goal.
The end goal, the ultimate goal. And what you're saying is, your advice would be actually give yourself a year plan and then a 5-year plan. So don't do away with those high aspirations, but be realistic, take realistic steps. And you were also saying earlier, allow yourself some time, which I think is so essential. I mean, tell us about that. I mean, how long has it taken you already in your career to get?
Yeah, even for me, I mean, it's only been in the last sort of 3 or 4 years that I feel like I'm really gained some momentum in directing. I mean, like I said, I came from an editing background, but I think what many people, I mean, maybe they do realise it, but what is absolutely true is it is so difficult. I mean, you're in an industry that's massively competitive. You know, for every role, there's 1,000 people that want the same job. You're always competing against someone for some job, and let's say the top of the chain, you know, let's say, which is, I guess, making feature films, you know, like if that's the top, that's such a small industry. I mean, it's tiny. I mean, I know you look at cinema, you see films everywhere, but when you break it down, it's just a tiny little industry. And if you're completely obsessed with reaching that point, it's very difficult because there's so much in the middle. And not just because that's my goal, that's where I want to be there. All this in the middle is all the learning curve that you have to have that gets you to that point. And that's what I always say to people is, okay, you want to be an actor, don't just learn about acting, learn about everything, learn the whole process. You want to be an editor, go on set, see how films are made, you know, learn how cameras work, you know, all that stuff, whatever it is, learn everything you can within your industry, because these are all the tools you're going to need when you get to that, you know, to help you get to that higher place. You know, you need all this knowledge, and I think sometimes people just put that all aside and assume, no, I want this, and this doesn't quite work like that. I mean, the other thing you've got to bear in mind as well is, you know, say you've made the commitment, right, I want to get into the film industry. It's very hard to get paid. when you're starting out, because no one wants to hire you because nobody knows you. You know, so you can't just walk on and say, I want to be on, you know, the next Star Wars film. It doesn't work like that. You know, you need to be, so you're in a difficult place where you want to get work. You can't get work because you've got no experience. You can't get experience because you've got no work. And you need to earn money.
Right.
You need to get money coming in.
Yes.
And like I said, for me, I had to go away, and whether it was shooting a little wedding video here or doing a little music video here and doing all this stuff on my own just to get income coming in, you know, because if you're a director, no one's going to employ you when you're starting out. No one knows who you are.
And you need experience, and even those wedding shoots or whatever, that's experience. Talking about weddings, let's talk about our background and our ethnic background and being Turkish. Have you done any Turkish projects at all?
I've done 2 short films. And they both did very well on the festival circuit, to be fair. The last one I did was called Footprints on the Moon. And that came about when my grandfather, he passed away, and we went to the funeral, and I saw obviously all his old friends and stuff, which I hadn't seen in years. And as a kid, I remember them as, you know, young people, and here I was looking at them as old people. Now they were looking fragile, and, you know. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a whole generation, the first generation, if you like, that came over and started life here and stuff, and all their stories and stuff like that are going to disappear, you know. And that's one of my regrets with my grandparents, is I didn't ask them enough questions, because when you're young, you don't care, you know. When you're older, you have all these questions. I wish I was, you know, you lived through a war, you lived through this, you lived through that. I would love to have known all that stuff.
Document that somehow,
So I thought to myself, wow, there's a whole generation now that sadly aren't going to be there anymore, and all their, whether it's silly things like recipes and all this stuff is just going to be gone, you know. And I think one of the important things as a filmmaker is to document, is storytelling, and it's preserving that stuff. So I thought, you know, wouldn't it be great if, you know, during Bayram, my grandmother, she has this open door policy, and everybody just comes to her house, you know, whether it's friends, family, doesn't matter. And you know, we come by and I see this spectacle of, like, you know,
different people,
20, 30 nenes all just sitting there,
sitting
you know,
there
discussing
with their stories, and they're not as innocent as they seem. They've got some whopper stories. I'm telling you, like, they all let us sit there looking like, you know, butter wouldn't melt, but actually my nan, some of the stories she told me. Yes.
Well, that's what it was. You're looking for those stories because you realise that these stories are, they're going to be gone, you know. So I thought, so I invited a bunch of my filmmaker friends, and we just, almost like a documentary style, you know. I knew I wanted to tell a certain story, but essentially I just wanted them to go with it, pretend we're not here, and just document them. And it was amazing, you know. We set these cameras up and we just let them do their thing over the course of a day, and it was a lovely summer's day, and it was amazing, you know. They were just retelling all these stories, and yeah, it was.
What was the most memorable story? I'm really curious. Which one?
There was one where I think she just come over, and I think she wanted to buy a cockerel.
Right. As you do when
do,
you come to London, because they're everywhere, aren't they? And she wanted to buy that, right?
And she was at the butcher's,
find one.
And she couldn't.
She did find one.
Well, she couldn't say it to the butcher. She didn't know the words. She couldn't speak the language.
Oh my goodness! And what did she say?
So she's sitting there trying to explain it. And then she started making a noise, like, coo, coo, coo, you know, and the butcher's like, what are you on about, you know?
Oh my
and
goodness.
Then she said, chicken husband.
Chicken husband? Oh, great.
And the
And
butcher
did you
went,
understand? Okay, I know what you're saying
and
now.
she got it, yeah, so that was nice. But yeah, it's just little stories like that, and stuff that we take for granted because we grow up in that environment, you know. And that's what I always say to people is, you know, what we do, you take it for granted, but outside of that community, it's interesting, it's enriching, you know.
Yes.
So, you know, we did this film and we put it out in a festival, so, and it got an amazing response, you know. People just really warmed to it because it showed people, you know, especially now, you know, the whole thing of, you know, a lot of these nenes, they're wearing their scarves and stuff like that, and there's a certain perception of who they are and all that stuff.
That's right.
But this just showed people, nice, lovely, warm people, doing normal stuff and talk about normal things, and it was just lovely, and it just did really well. It did really well around the festival circuit because, and it was just nice. It was just nice for me to showcase something from my culture and present it.
Yeah, because I do find that I think we can both relate to that. We're second, third generation in this country, and obviously, but our roots are from Cyprus, so we want to keep our Turkishness, but at the same time, obviously, our communication is through the English language.
Yeah.
And we're talking about that, isn't it? And our feelings about that. I mean, how do we bridge that gap? How do we do that? Do you think what's the best way?
Well, I mean, firstly, just doing things like this where we're talking in English. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but just being able to articulate yourself comfortably, you know, because we are born in this country and, you know, we do speak English. That's just, you know, that's our first language and we'd use it, you know, 70% of the time. And if you're trying to create a community and a sense of people, but you're then alienating them through language, it becomes difficult. It does the complete opposite, you know. And I know, you know, through shows like yours and, you know, there's all these networking events that are starting to pop up where people are bypassing a generation, coming to another generation and saying, come to us, you know, feel comfortable talking your first language, let's be honest. And suddenly that brings people together.
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's really important. It's a message. I think we're all striving to do that. There are so many people doing so many successful things. I mean, you're a successful director now. You're telling me about how, you know, you've done an array of things within commercials, filmmaking, working for television and your own projects. And it's amazing that you've been able to share that here with our community, but obviously, like you said, we're doing it in English, and I think that's important. We need to bridge that gap and bring it together so that we can still remember where we come from, but still move forward and create a community here. So almost like we're like a dual nationality where we're British, very much British, so very much embracing that heritage, but also embracing our ethnic background, and like you said, what our nenes did and what our nans did, what our grandparents did, and actually not forgetting those and documenting them. And it's through people like yourself that we're able to do that. We've only got 5 minutes, so you're going to have to come back in the new year and tell us about your new projects and share them with us. But what's your New Year's resolution before you leave us? What's your New Year's resolution? Where do you want to be?
Well, I guess, again, giving myself those sort of mini goals, 1 year goals. For me, I would like to end next year having directed my first television program, drama television program. That's my sort of goal for this year. Is I feel like I've done enough commercial work, I've done enough branded work, and as much as I love it, for me, drama is still where, you know, my heart is, and I just absolutely love it. And just in November, we just did a short film, really lovely script, and we were lucky enough to have Charlotte Riley and Tom Weston-Jones on it.
Yeah, we were looking at some images on the screen there.
And
that's amazing. And that was all filmed here,
That was filmed here, and the sole purpose of that, from my perspective, was, again, we're talking about, you know, growing and moving forward as a director. It was just a showcase that I can direct actors, I can work on in drama, and I'm hopefully going to use that now as a calling card to get myself into that bracket of TV, television director. And TV director now is an amazing time. You know, if you went back even 15 years, it was a completely different park. You know, when I was growing up, when I was working in the industry, starting out, you'd be lucky if there was 10 dramas at any given time in the UK. You know,
right.
whereas now there's tons. You know, especially now you've got the streaming platforms and stuff like that. You know, it's a lovely time to get involved in filmmaking because there's just so much content. And
you need to support that, definitely. We need our directors and our producers in this country, because our British film industry is so filled with talent and new, fresh ideas. I think we're quite forward-thinking and forward-leading, but obviously the finances aren't quite there. So to encourage people to work in this country, I think is amazing. So the fact that you're thinking of doing that isn't just good for yourself, but it's actually good for the British film industry as well, that people that are bred and actually gain the experience in this country stay in this country and actually give back.
Well, that was a very common thing, you know, even 20 years ago, if you're a director, was you'd have to go to the States. I mean, that's just how it was. You know, if you wanted to move your career forward, you'd have to move to the States, whereas that's all gone now, you know. Like I said, there's so much opportunity now. So it's an amazing time, and yeah, it's just finding my way, navigating through that, and just getting my place within that. You know.
It's been great speaking to you, Serkan,
pleasure,
today.
yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on my programme.
No, pleasure.
And definitely in January and forwards, when you're not so busy, you've got to come again and tell us about your new projects and how it's going. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it from us. Have a very good evening from Euro Ginch TV. Goodbye.